Okay.
Yeah, everything's settled. Andrea can start.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rita, for inviting me to chair this session. Welcome, everybody. My name is Andrea Reyes Elizondo. I'm a researcher at the Center for Science and Technology Studies at Leiden University. And it's my pleasure today to present my colleague, Marían Crespo Lopez. Oops, sorry. Marían is a junior researcher at the Center for Research Integrity and Open Science, RIOS, part of the Department of Philosophy at the FU in Amsterdam. Her research focuses on equity, diversity, and inclusion in open science, research integrity, and recognition and rewards. She is also the publication steward at Amsterdam University Medical Center, where she supports researchers in making their work more open and develops guidelines for integrating open science into recognition and rewards. Beyond academia, she is part of Issue, an archive of collective struggle. It's a grassroots, a collective, and independent magazine. So the session will be as follows. Marían will present some slides between 25, 30 minutes, something like that. And then we'll move to, I have a couple of questions and we will open the floor. But in the meantime, if you, while you're seeing the slides, if you see some questions, you can start putting them in the Q&A button at the top. And we'll finish at 5 o'clock. So Marían, the floor is yours.
Nice. Thank you, Andrea, for this nice introduction. And also thank you, Rita and Mariette, for the invitation to present today. And of course, thank you also to all of you for joining today. It's very nice to recognize some names in the participants list. Okay, so I will share my slides and then the recording should also start. 1 second. Yeah, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, great. Okay, so the presentation I have for today is based on this one-year project that was conducted at the FU and funded by CoARA Boost. This is the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, and it was conducted together with my colleagues Chris Malabib and Rita Santos from both the Vrije Universiteit and Amsterdam UMC. This project focused on questions of diversity, equity, and inclusion in researcher evaluation. So as I will show you in a bit, we looked at the policies, we looked at how people experience this, and through a series of co-creation workshops, we developed some recommendations. Maybe also important to mention here and to give you a bit of an idea of how this all rolls out. As part of this open call from CoARA, this was the only project that focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in research evaluation. And then there was a second call this year where I don't remember now by heart, but there was 1 or 2 projects on this topic. But overall, there's not that much attention in Europe into it. Or there is a bit more in the Netherlands, but it's usually looking only at gender and also gender as a binary. So I think it's an important conversation to have here on how this should also encompass other marginalized identities. So having said this, and to give you a bit of context on these issues, we started our research on this project looking at the leaky pipeline phenomenon. This is a phenomenon that describes how minority and women researchers face barriers in advancing through academic grants and how they see limits in the recognition, support, and the opportunities they have when compared to their non-minority counterparts, so men and white people. There is a lot of literature into this phenomenon, especially in the US. So it's a very well-documented phenomenon. And as I said, there is a bit less attention in the Netherlands, especially if we look at multiple marginalized identities and not just as gender. And this issue becomes even more pressing when we look at the phenomenon of intersectionality. So how overlapping marginalized identities create unique experiences of bias. So just to give you an example, for example, women minority researchers face both sexism and racism, which increases the challenges they face in academia. And if you want to look a bit more into this, this is also known as the double-bind theory. Other important phenomena that we also had in mind when conducting this research were the glass ceiling and the sticky floor phenomenon. So this describes the barriers faced by women and minority researchers at different stages. So the glass ceiling refers to how these people see their access to higher ranks blocked due to, for example, hidden criteria or access to networks. And then the sticky floor refers to the phenomenon of keeping these people in lower ranks. So how they see themselves in these more insecure roles that also limit their mobility. Other important phenomena was also the Old Boys Network. Maybe you are familiar with this. This refers to the networks of male researchers who help each other through these informal networks that exclude women because of their gender identity, but also because of the norms they operate within. And cultural taxation, this refers to the invisible emotional labor and service work performed by women in academia. I will go back to this concept a bit later because this was something that came up quite a bit in our conversations and in our workshops. And finally, the Matilda effect, which is also quite known, and it's a form of epistemic exclusion where women's contributions are either overlooked or they are credited to their male colleagues. So for example, there is a meeting, a woman proposes some new idea, but instead of crediting it to her, later on, this is credited to a male researcher, or just during that same meeting, there is a male researcher that repeats the same idea, and then it's when it's taken into account. So with all of these concepts in mind, I also wanted to talk a bit about the recognition and rewards reforms in the Netherlands. I think you might also be familiar with this, but these are the reforms in that universities transforming research evaluation. So the idea here is to shift from the perverse quantitative-based metrics and incentives that emphasize, for example, publishing many articles in in journals with high reputation, to more quality-focused criteria. And also as part of these reforms, the idea is to also start recognizing and rewarding the diverse profiles. So diversifying the careers, not only looking at research, but also education, leadership, and for example, in the case of medical faculties, also patient care, for example. So here we see that the idea is to have a more broad, inclusive, fair researcher evaluation. And there's usually this guiding principle of everyone talent counts. So the idea here that is also mentioned is that it's important to not waste talent. But when looking at these reforms, we see that there is a lot of attention put on the, let's say, different disciplines, the different roles that people have within universities, and also the diverse career ranks. But there is very limited attention to other structural inequalities that, as I mentioned before, with this long list of concepts, is making some people operate at different levels. So there is not a level playing field, but even within a faculty or a department, people are facing diverse challenges that also affect their talent and if they leave or not academia. So now I'm trying to slowly focus more at the VU. We have also these reforms happening at the VU. And at our institution, the diversity office has been very busy conceptualizing and implementing the diversity office colorful staff action plan. The idea here is to start focusing more on DEI in hiring, recognition and rewards and working practices. But so far, there have been mostly working on hiring practices, but not so much on recognition and rewards and the working practices themselves. And this is important to look at DEI at universities not as a matter of justice or as an end in itself, but also if we want to conduct good quality research, or if we want to have more social impacts, or if we want to address biases such as gender and racial biases. So there are many reasons why this is something that should be taken more into consideration. And hopefully also with the results of this project, but also the important work that the Diversity Office is doing, we will gain more traction into these issues. And just as a final comment about the VU, the idea here was that there was a central policy that was quite brief and quite general, with the new profiles and some considerations from this recognition and rewards program. And the different faculties were tasked with the responsibility to translate this central policy into the different faculty policies. So they had a bit more context and idea on what it was needed in every faculty, and they were the ones responsible for developing their new faculty policies. And this is a bit already the idea of our project, but here we saw that DEI remains under interest. So now, going into the project, our final aim was to have a list of recommendations or an action plan on how these policies could integrate EDI more consistently and more explicitly. And our approach was to have 4 co-creation workshops. Maybe this slide is a bit more helpful for you. This was a 1-year project that ended in December 2025. And we started making an inventory of strategies, of challenges, but also ways to solve or address these challenges, looking at what was there in the literature. As I said before, most of this literature comes from the US. With this inventory, we had a first workshop with recognition and rewards experts, then a second workshop with recognition and rewards experts, but also EDI experts and people with lived experience. What we tried to do here to make sure that we were also not increasing the service, invisible labor of marginalized researchers was to invite experts that also had lived experience. So trying to find people for whom this workshop could also be interesting and important for their work, and not just for because of their personal identity and what they were experiencing themselves. After this, we developed a first draft of an action plan that was refined later also with participants. And maybe some of you were there, but between workshop 3 and workshop 4, we also had a symposium where we invited European experts working on these topics to also have more background information for our last workshop. So here you can see the factors that we found that contribute to the leaky pipeline phenomenon. I don't think they are very surprising. Some of the factors are lack of clear and transparent promotion criteria that allows for these hidden criteria to operate outside of the radar of some people. Sexism and racial discrimination, high workloads, exclusion from networks, precarious working conditions, and lack of financial support for engaging in true interests. And some of the solutions, there was quite a lot of agreement in the literature of the things that could be helpful here. For example, having inclusive leaderships, competent mentorship, role models, acknowledging identity in knowledge production over objectivity. There are these discussions now on how to integrate more positionality statements in research, and this was also something that was seen as helpful for a more inclusive working culture. Then the only suggested solution that was a bit more debated in the literature was the last one, regarding rewarding research on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it was also found that it was usually the same kind of researchers that were doing this type of research. So then maybe they had their main research line. They were experts, let's say, in physics, and then they were doing this work because of their own experiences and their own participation in committees, diversity committees. So the issue here was that at some point, when this is rewarded, these people would spend more time on this, and their other research interests would be pushed out or not rewarded in the same way. So just to keep in mind that this is the only suggested solution where there seems to be less agreement. This is the first output that we produced after the first two workshops. You will see in my presentation some QR codes. If you scan them, you can have a more detailed look at these documents. Here we looked at all the faculty policies and the central one, and we especially looked at the main questions that you see in the center part of the infographic. So is diversity addressed in these policies? Are the policy developers known? How are the criteria? Is it clear and transparent? Consideration of caretaking roles? And is the diversity of the committees addressed? As you can maybe already see with a quick look, there is a lot of red in the picture, which means that this was not addressed at all. Orange means that it was ambiguous, addressed somehow, but not explicitly enough. And the green ones means that they are addressed. So now I will go a bit more into detail. The first question brought quite negative results. So diversity is barely addressed in policies. The only faculty that did have a bit more attention into this was the Faculty of Science. Here they do explicitly mention diversity as a goal, and they also mention the importance of bias training for leaders, having diverse committees and inclusive recruitment practices. But the rest of the policies overlook this issue. About the policy developers being known, only two policies explicitly mentioned who these policy developers were, and the other ones didn't do it. About the third questions here, it looks a bit more positive because indeed the criteria was quite clear and transparent. The issue here was that in most cases there was a lot of criteria, so researchers or educators were expected to excel in many different things, to the extent that sometimes the criteria could contribute to extremely high workloads or even to increase competition within departments. So yeah, there is now more division into the different roles or career paths, but still sometimes it seems that it's a bit the same different game, but the same rules. So excel in many different things. Then about the consideration of caretaking roles, this was again barely addressed. Interestingly, in the Faculty of Economics, female employees receive 6 months exemption from teaching after maternity leave. There is a budget for that to cover this teaching for these people that go on leave. And in the case of male employees, they were not required to make up for the teaching missed during their the childbirth leave. In the rest of the faculties, it was barely mentioned or not mentioned at all. And finally, regarding the committees, again, only the economics faculty mentioned the importance of having diverse committees, so both to prevent biases as much as possible, but also to make sure that the researchers saw themselves as part of this, so also represented in the committee. Okay. So after looking at the state of the policies, and with the literature review also in mind, we started to look at the critical points for diversity in the academic career trajectories. This is, if you scan the QR codes, this is an interactive document, so you can click on the different aspects, and it brings you to another page with more information. On the top part of the screen, you can see the factors that contribute in favor of DEI, and on the bottom part of the screen, you see the ones that contribute against. The policies do address or only address the ranks from assistant professor to full professor, also because of their nature and because of their focus now on these ranks in the recognition and rewards reforms. But we saw that in this leaky pipeline, most of the diversity is actually lost at the previous stages. So there is a big percentage of diverse talents that are lost already in school. Because, for example, of this advice given in schools to which kids will go to what type of education. And sometimes here it was not only looked at the level or at the capabilities of the kid itself, but there were also questions regarding the level of education of the parents. So we see quite a lot of bias here already affecting who goes on to the bachelor level. Then here, and also the master's level, we see also issues with accommodations, flexibility, first generation students that face more barriers and access. And of course, this also accumulates over time. So there's also people that are putting a lot of effort in continuing in academia, and the game gets harder and harder the more that they advanced in this path. Then at the PhD level, we saw that actually 50% around 50% of them are international, and 60% of the postdocs are international, which doesn't translate at all in the numbers that we've seen later on. And here we see issues related to hiring and recruitment, mobility expectations, visas. For example, some PhD candidates mentioned that they were expected to attend conferences and they couldn't even join these conferences because they wouldn't get a visa to attend, sometimes even in fields such as research integrity. And then later on, we, of course, have specific issues related to tenure, lack of support, narrow view of diversities, and conflicts of interest in recruitment. And along all these different states, sexism, racism, ableism, classism, and so on are influencing who can continue in academia or not. As I said, you can click on the different issues that we address here. And for example, in this one, you get a bit more information related to the informal networks, departmental decisions that influence the progression from assistant to full professor. Again, caretaking responsibilities, illnesses, life events are one of the main factors that influence who needs to quit academia or decides to quit academia. Something also very interesting that was mentioned related to recruitment and promotion was about how much knowledge human resources teams have, but this doesn't really translate in how the process is done, because these committees are usually made by the supervisors, close colleagues, fellow department members of the candidates. So there are conflicts of interest there. There is a lot of information that is shared with each other in an informal way that shouldn't be part of a fair recruitment process. And there is a lack of awareness and training in biases in these committees. I already mentioned it, but discrimination and barriers that affect all stages, and also interestingly, cultural barriers. So sometimes things are a bit more implicit. There is a borel where people are expected to network and to connect with each other. But for example, there are quite some people that wouldn't join this because of religious, health, cultural reasons. So there is not that much attention put into these kind of events that also affect how people belong or not in their departments. And then on the more positive side, we also looked at what could help in each state. for all stages, inclusive leadership, broad understandings of identity, unbiased hiring, and practical help for people going through important life events or caretaking responsibilities. Also, something to mention here was that there are quite some services, support services, and even rights regulations. So, for example, the FTEs or the hours that women that are lactating are able to get compensated, but people don't know about this, and their supervisors also don't know about this. So it's important to have some kind of roadmap or make this more clear so people can actually know what is available and what their rights are. Yeah. And finally, I'm also looking at the time. I think I should start wrapping up. We came up with these recommendations that were also revised with the people from our workshop and co-created together. Again, you can scan the QR code and read the full document with more information, but I will walk you through them now one by one. Our first recommendation is to integrate DI considerations into recognition and rewards policy revisions and implementations at all levels. And again, make this as explicit as possible, because otherwise everything depends on the goodwill and the knowledge and information that supervisors or leaders have. Our second recommendation is related to monitoring and documenting the state of diversity, equity, and inclusion at universities. This aligns with the National Action Plan for Greater Diversity in Higher Education from 2025. I couldn't find if there is any follow-up of that. Maybe if someone from the audience knows and wants to tell us, that would be very interesting. Something mentioned here was the issue of collecting private data and how universities can do that. Sometimes this also seems to be used a bit as an excuse, like, oh, because of privacy reasons, we cannot collect data on people's race or people's religion. But this also makes it very difficult to monitor the state and see if things are actually improving or not. And for example, Utrecht University has found a way to do it in a way that complies with privacy rights, and that helps them actually see how things are progressing or not. And again, there's a bit more information on this in the full documents. And then it would also be important to address resistant parties' concerns, because something that comes up when talking about these issues is the phenomenon of meritocracy. And some people think that making universities more diverse and inclusive comes at the cost of less quality, because it's not the best ones that progress, but we're just making things easier for everyone. And as I mentioned before, this shouldn't be the case. We could also debate about meritocracy. Maybe that's also interesting at the end. But also having more diverse workforce helps also make better quality research that is less biased. Then I won't repeat this one, but unbiased recruitment and evaluation procedures, training committees, have more guidance by HR, especially on conflicts of interest, and who should be or not part of these committees is important. Involving the central recognition rewards team more. It was maybe useful to have things a bit more spread out between the faculties, but at this point it seems that people are working in parallel, but not always aware of what others are doing, and there is not even a clear vision of who is working on that in general. So it would be important to have set people within each faculty that could report to each other and also be responsible, because then the issue with this is that it's easy that accountability gets lost in the way, and also we're not monitoring, so things actually don't change. Address caretaking and leaves, clear guidance, funds to support people reintegrating, financial compensation. So very practical material help could be helpful here. Incorporating policies for fair recognition and rewards at earlier levels. So again, as part of these reforms, there is attention on at the professor's level, but not really before. Now there is more attention put now in PhDs in these reforms, but it would be important to start even earlier to make sure that we are not losing a big part of the diverse students already early on. And then implementing inclusive leadership, trainings for research leaders, maybe mandatory. This is also something that is, as we heard, done in Utrecht, even by external parties. They are the ones providing the training. And making inclusive leadership a formal evaluation criterion for the promotion of research leaders. And finally, recognize and rewarding diversity, equity, and inclusion related work. Again, this is a bit more contested. Maybe it depends on the specific context and situation in every faculty. This is what was also mentioned by our participants in the workshops, that it would be helpful to be recognized because people are investing a lot of time and energy into this. But again, this could come at the cost of people not being able to advance their careers in other fields. And also, this to wrap up, allocating a specific time and financial resources, because there were quite some people that were doing this either in their free time or with no funding at all for very great initiatives that we're trying to put into place. So this was all. You have my email address there if you have any questions. This was supervised again by Rita and Krishma, so maybe they are the ones that have the answers to your questions. If you send me an email and I need to redirect it, I will do it and they will give you an answer. But yeah, thank you for listening. And yeah, if you have maybe any suggestions on how to make sure that this just doesn't stay just as interesting results, but actually that we can create some change and impact with this, it would be very helpful. Because now we're at the stage where we are sharing our results. We want people on board to actually make changes. I think it's also an important moment with the revisions of these policies. So if you have any suggestions on how to gain more traction and attention to this, that would be great. Okay, we'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Marían. So I see already